You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt McGackie, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to today's podcast. I am so excited that you are here with me, and I am very excited about this week's guest, Mr. John Nolan from Taking Back Sunday, Stray Light Run, and a bunch of other projects. I've been a big fan of his work for years, and I know a lot of you have too, so this is one of those episodes that is just a real treat. You know, it's not something I ever thought I would get to do, and it's always exciting to talk to people that you admire and whose work has had a lot of impact on you over the years. So this is a really fun episode for me, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. I just want to do one quick reminder before we jump into this episode, because I had a lot of fun this weekend with the folks over on the text chat. So if you text 503-751-8577, that comes directly to me. You click a few buttons, you join the text community, and what happens then is I'll send messages out to the whole group, and that will engage you to participate in a conversation with me. So it's not a group chat where everyone is all chatting together. It is a one-on-one conversation between myself and yourself, and you can ask me whatever you want. We're talking gear, we're talking music, we're talking music business, and this weekend we were discussing horror movies. So you never know what those conversations might be. And yes, it is indeed me. It is me and my thumbs doing the texting. No one else is involved, and I do really work hard to respond to everybody over there. It's a lot of fun. It's one of the more fun things that I've gotten to do with this community. And with the recent Zuck's outage, I was really, really happy to be able to still have a line of communication with the listeners. So if that is something you would like to participate in, you can just shoot a message to 503-751-8577, answer a few questions. Then if you ever decide it's not for you, you can just text stop, and that's it. I don't share that information with anybody. I don't even see the phone numbers. So it's all private. It's all groovy, and it's a lot of fun. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into this episode with Mr. John Nolan. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar stuff occasionally, sometimes. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have John Nolan from Taking Back Sunday, Stray Light Run, and just a whole bunch of other stuff. What's going on, man?
Hey, not too much. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I wish I could have done this in person, but, such as the times we live in, this is
Yes.
This will do.
Yeah.
So a little bit of backstory. Been a fan for a really long time. So of a bunch of your different projects. So this is really exciting for me. And also, as a little bit of a sidebar, my wife has specifically been, every time she listens to Stray Light Run, she's like, you really need to get John on the podcast. Like for 3 years, she's been asking me to do this. So,
well, I'm glad it finally happened.
Me too. Yeah, I got an email from Amy about something, and I was like, wait a minute. I just replied real quick, and Lynn was like, you finally did it. So here we are.
Yeah.
But I'm sure most of my audience is probably pretty familiar with you and what you've done, but maybe a good place to start for those that aren't aware, I know you've done a bunch of interviews and told your story many times, but the quick and dirty version of who you are and your musical history and all that jazz.
Yeah, sure. Well, I started playing with Taking Back Sunday when the band formed in 1999. And I played with Taking Back Sunday through 2003. And then I left and started Straylight Run. And Straylight Run went until about 2009. And then I rejoined Taking Back Sunday in 2010. And then throughout all that stuff, I've put out some solo records on my own. And then not too long ago, started a project with Anthony Green and Adam from my band, and Ben Homela from Group Love. And I think that about brings us up to speed.
Nice. Very cool, man. Yeah. So you've primarily played guitar for all of these, but do you play other things as well?
Yeah, I play piano is my second, the instrument that I'm kind of, I guess, second most knowledgeable about. I've done a bit of it with Taking Back Sunday, a lot more of it with Straylight Run. And then, that's about it for real. I play the bass. Most guitar players could play the bass, but a lot of my solo stuff, I have recorded the bass on it. And I really enjoyed that. And I really tried to approach it like a bass player, not like a guitar player who plays the bass, as much as possible. And I learned a little bit of violin when I was in my early 20s. I took some very, very basic lessons. I wouldn't say I play the violin at all. I learned how to do like scales, and I could play like Twinkle Little Star on it or something.
Right. Yeah, the whole bass playing guitar player thing, it really hits home, because I just was playing a little bass myself and put a clip out on Instagram, and I'm like, this totally is just a guitar player playing bass. Like, just too much noodling, not enough pocket, and just
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing here? Every guitar player thinks they can play bass for some reason.
It's pretty obvious, I guess, to anyone who understands the bass, but that focus on what's happening with the kick drum is very important. And as a guitar player, it's not usually that much of a thought, at least for me. I don't know, maybe other guitar players think about it more, but generally I am not thinking about what the kick drum is doing while I'm playing guitar. So it's a whole different kind of focus you have to have.
So have you been much of a gear guy for most of your career, or you just kind of play whatever's around?
I've been somewhere in the middle, I would say. I've been more into get different guitar pedals and less into them at different times. I've kind of settled on what I like at a certain point in the process. Probably around when I rejoined Taking Back Sunday, I kind of had found all the things I liked, like as far as guitars and amps. And I've pretty much stuck with that for the past 10 years or so. So, it's something that I'm aware of and interested in, but I'm definitely not one of those people who like is obsessive about it, or like could just go on and on about different types of gear and things like that,
Yeah. So can you want to take us through that process? So where did you start gear wise, probably when you started with Taking Back Sunday, and then where did you end up locked in for the last 10 years?
So when I started with Taking Back Sunday, that the band was just, it was a local band, and we didn't have any reason to think that we would go further than playing like VFW halls on Long Island. I mean, we wanted to, but we didn't have any reason to think that would happen. And I kind of had even less experience with my gear setup than probably a lot of other people in local bands. I had been playing in bands all through high school and after high school, but I kind of had a very basic thing. I think I was still playing like an Ibanez that I had gotten when I was 16. And I had like a Fender like combo amp, I think, or something like that. It was not bad, but pretty basic. I think it was kind of like one of the cheaper combo amps, a Fender. And then when I joined Taking Back Sunday, Eddie, the guitar player, kind of was like, you're going to have to change your whole approach here. So he kind of got me going with, I think I ended up with some kind of a Marshall half stack after that. And then I went through like a variety of guitars, through the years, and somewhere along the way kind of ended up exclusively just playing Fender electric, usually Telecasters or Telecaster Deluxe. Pretty much settled into that, and generally now we have a Supro combo amps that we use on stage. I kind of went through that thing that I think maybe a lot of guitar players go through too, where you have this giant stack and a cabinet with 4 12-inch speakers, and then you realize at a certain point you're putting a microphone on it so you can use a combo amp, and it sounds just as big, and it's much easier to get around with it on the road.
What about your pedals? Were you playing with many pedals back in the day?
In the early days of Taking Back Sunday, not that many. I had a pretty basic setup. I would say it was pretty much distortion, and I used to use the DD3 Boss delay a lot. Actually, I still do. I really like that pedal. And that was basically it. There might have been some things that I used in the studio here and there. The one thing that I learned with Taking Back Sunday was also I had a volume pedal in the setup. So a lot of times I would use that to kind of go between clean and dirty, or then like somewhere in between the clean and dirty sound. And I would use that a lot, and still do with Taking Back Sunday. And then when I started doing stuff with Straylight Run, that was when I started to get a lot more of more into the pedal side of things, and started to get a little more of a complex setup with that.
Right. When you went in to record, did you basically just take your road setup and go into the studio, or did you get kind of wild and experimental when you had the opportunity to do so?
With Taking Back Sunday?
Either way.
Yeah, I mean, the first Taking Back Sunday album was a pretty basic thing, our whole recording process of it. And so that I just brought in, I had, my guitar, whatever it was at the time, and the basic pedal setup. And then again, yeah, with Straylight Run, there was a lot more of the experimenting with pedals in the studio. And then I think I kind of based a lot of what I brought into the live show after recording the album on what I had done in the studio. And that's kind of something I've done ever since then, with the last 2 Taking Back Sunday albums as well. Nowadays, a lot of times we show up and the producer and engineer have just like dozens and dozens, or maybe hundreds of pedals to choose from for any given part of any song. And so we'll usually go through a lot of the options and try a lot of things out. And then by the end of the process, if there's a sound that I got with pedals that I didn't have before, then I'll usually try to work that into my setup for the live show. Gotcha.
So you mentioned something a little bit earlier when you guys were playing VFW halls and all that, and you didn't really think you were going to get out of that.
Yeah.
Was there an aha moment where you realized, hey, wait, we might actually be able to get out of the VFW hall?
There was actually, which is, we've talked about it a few times in interviews, because it was funny because Adam and I both had the same aha moment at the same time. And it was like, we had a different singer at the beginning of the band. And then Adam was playing bass originally, actually. And so he ended up switching over to vocals, obviously. And we recorded a 5-song demo with him. And then I'd say within like 6 months or so of playing local shows with that demo, we started to really notice a change in the amount of people coming out, and also like the level of craziness that was happening at the shows. And there was one show in particular. There was a bar we used to play on Long Island. They would do like all ages shows in the afternoon on Sunday, you know, when they'd let anybody in, even if you weren't 21. And the place was packed. It was a small place, but normally when we would play there, there'd be like maybe 50 people. And this time it was like well over 100, like completely packed to the back wall. And everybody was going crazy. And not only that, they knew the words to a lot of the songs that we had recorded on these demos. And after the show, it was really clear, like for Adam and I, we both talked about it later, but that was a moment we kind of both remember sitting back after the show and being like, wow, like something's happening, you know, and it wasn't necessarily like, oh, we're going to be huge or, you know, whatever, but we just knew that something we were doing was catching on, and you know, we were getting somewhere we had never been before.
Do you think that was a result of like more and more people coming into the shows and just catching you around Long Island, or were people like circulating your demos around the old school mixtape way, or what do you think caused that to finally happen?
Well, I think it was probably a combination of things. I think that we've been playing on Long Island and kind of building a following. So people knew who we were, which helped. You know, we weren't just coming out of nowhere. I think that the demo did catch on in a really like organic kind of way where people were playing it for each other. I think back then, you know, it was so long ago that people couldn't even really. I mean, I guess you could burn a CD. Some people had the technology to copy a CD, and that even at the time was sort of like amazing new technology. So I don't know how much people were actually like spreading it around, but they were definitely playing it for each other, and there was a word of mouth thing that was happening with that, and at the time too, it was just kind of the right time and place for the type of music we were playing. It had been around on Long Island for a long time, but it was kind of starting to finally get noticed a little more in the mainstream. You had like bands like Thursday starting to be on MTV2 and maybe even the radio. I don't remember, but you know, so there was that thing happening too. There was a lot of factors that were coming together for us.
Mm-hmm. Who were some of your early inspirations? Thursday, obviously. And who else comes to mind?
The Get Up Kids were a really big one for me. The Promise Ring was also a big one. Those were kind of the two like closest in that genre that I was really just like just super into, and you know, to me that was kind of like what I was shooting for with, you know, with the sound that Taking Back Sunday had, and I think because everybody else had their own influences, you know, it ended up being this mix of a lot of different things. Those were the two big ones. There was a lot of other stuff. You know, I had gotten into Modest Mouse at that time, which wasn't really, I don't think I was able to bring too much of that influence into what I did with Taking Back Sunday, but they were one of my favorites at that time. And Archers of Loaf a bit was one I really remember, kind of like, you know, I think like Archers of Loaf, Promise Ring, and Get Up Kids were the ones I think I was probably thinking about the most, and maybe at the drive-in, like, of like, okay, this is something maybe I could, an influence I can follow, and, you know, into this band a bit.
Gotcha. And I have to assume that changed when Straylight Run became the main focus. You'd evolved a little bit since then, and the sound definitely, it's, you know, you can tell it's in the same vein and the same person, but it's wildly different. What made you want to make that switch?
Well, the thing is, like, when I talk about those bands, you know, that was stuff I got into really only a year or two before I started playing with Taking Back Sunday. And like all through high school, I had really been into classic rock. I had like a huge phase with the Beatles, which I think most people do at some point in their life. And I had, even like being from Long Island, like even Billy Joel was kind of like a huge thing to me. The Billy Joel's greatest hits was sort of every Long Islander had to have their copy of it, and so I was really into that, and like Ben Folds 5, and and then with the Promise Ring and all that kind of stuff, there was also a lot of more like indie type things that I had gotten into. Again, like Modest Mouse and Built to Spill was a huge one for me. So I kind of, even before Taking Back Sunday, had all these musical influences that there wasn't really much place for them with Taking Back Sunday. So I think with Straight Light Run, I was kind of going back to a lot of those.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. One of the things I like to get into with somebody who's been able to, make music their career in such a direct way for so long is like talking to younger bands and newer artists and things like that. Is there any advice or warnings or anything you would say to your younger self that you could say to somebody trying to get started in the music industry in the same capacity today?
Well, I don't know if I would say it to myself, but I would definitely say to anybody trying to make it in a band, and especially if you're younger and trying to make it happen, is that I think you have to be doing it because you just love doing it so much, and it's the only thing you can really see yourself doing. I think if you're doing it because you want to be famous, or you want to make a lot of money, or you want girls to like you, or I don't know, any number of things, you're not going to be able to stick it out for very long. I mean, you can get famous, obviously, and have girls like you and make money. Those things do happen, but there's a lot of stuff I think that comes with being in a touring band for the long term that is just, it's really difficult. There's a lot of things I think that people don't realize they're going to have to deal with. And I think the only thing that makes you stick it out through all that stuff is just the love of playing music, and just knowing it's what you do and what you kind of have to do.
Yeah, I think there are enough of these conversations out there at this point, and enough, general knowledge. The curtain's been pulled back a little bit, that hopefully people are aware that the rock star lifestyle isn't quite what it used to be, and maybe in most cases it never was what it was portrayed as. I mean, I know Motley Crue was always wild, right? But there's only one Motley Crue, and thousands of other bands are not that way. Clearly, there's crazy things that happen and outliers, but after doing this podcast and getting to know so many people that I've looked up to over the years, the story generally is, like when I'd go interview somebody here in Portland, it's like, wow, look at this wild time backstage with carrots and celery, like,
yeah, and a bunch of dudes just sitting looking at their phone for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not quite, I think, what the general public may think it is, although I do think that's changing. But,
well, and I think that probably even in the 90s and maybe the 80s and whatever, that I think a lot of this typical rock star type stuff that people think about, a lot of it does happen. I mean, and even through, for forever, I think that people that the typical stuff that people think about, there is a reality to it. There's just a whole nother reality that's a lot more boring and difficult and depressing, so the both things exist together, I think.
Right. There's a lot more gas station nachos and things like that involved than, champagne fountains and whatever,
Right.
else. But you've gotten the opportunity to play on some of the biggest stages in the world, though. So you've definitely seen both ends, from the VFW to, Carnegie Hall, or insert whatever it is here. But what is like a venue that really stands out to you as being particularly special, or you had a good time at, or is just an interesting place?
One of the big ones to me was the Jones Beach Amphitheater on Long Island. A lot of times, I think the ones that stand out to me are those ones that were more in New York, kind of places where I saw bands play. It's like the places you remember seeing someone play and thinking like, oh man, if I could do that one day, that would be the most amazing thing ever. And then you actually end up doing it. So the Jones Beach Theater was one of those, that was kind of the place where, a lot of the bigger bands that would come through New York, especially Long Island, that was about one of the biggest places you could play, aside from like maybe the Nassau Coliseum. So playing there was huge to me. And then Irving Plaza in New York, which is not a very big or like glamorous venue, but that was where I would go to see a lot of like the indie bands that were kind of in like the late 90s or early 2000s. That was sort of like one of the bigger venues for an indie rock band. And so when we got to that level, I felt like we had really made it, and that happened relatively quickly for Taking Back Sunday, like after 3 years of being in a band. And so that was huge to me, even though, like that's again, not one of the most impressive places, but it was, that one always kind of just has a place in my heart because of that. There's another one like that that's kind of funny. It's even smaller, called the Knitting Factory in Manhattan. And I think that place holds like 500 or 600 people. And I remember seeing the Promise Ring there and thinking, again, even at that level, thinking like, oh my God, if I could make it to that point and be in a band that's like headlining this place, that would be the most amazing thing. And they were like huge to me, seeing them in that place. I thought that they had really, they had made it. And now looking back on it, it's, a pretty small venue. And again, Taking Back Sunday was fortunate enough to get there relatively quickly, which is crazy. But, those are the ones that really stand out to me.
That makes a lot of sense. I know it's not exactly the same thing, but by the time this podcast took me to the backstages of venues I'd been attending my whole life, I was kind of like, wow, this is weird. And like, I wouldn't have thought that I would have ever had anything to do back here. I was always out front, It's not the same thing at all, but I can kind of relate to the seeing on the other side of the curtain and being like, oh, wow, I'm really here. This is kind of crazy.
Yeah. It's a cool thing. I mean, not a lot of people get to go to the other side. So, it's cool no matter what.
Absolutely. So you guys started pretty young. I don't know exactly what ages you were. How old were you guys when Taking Back Sunday started in a real way?
Yeah. When I started with Taking Back Sunday, I think I was 22. And, but that was like the very beginning. So I think when the band started taking off, I was more like 23 or 24.
Okay.
And, but the other guys were younger. Eddie was older than me, but Adam, Mark, and Sean, I think were all like 20 when the band started taking off. And maybe even younger when they joined the band. So they were, they were all pretty young.
Right. So in kind of tying into that question, did any of you guys, or you specifically, was your family like, I don't know about this whole touring band thing, or were they really supportive, or how did that go for you?
My parents were always really supportive, which I appreciated. And I think that they were supportive in a way that they kind of were like, this will be a nice, fun phase of your life. You'll get to try to go play music and see some things and do some things, and then eventually you'll settle down and do something more normal and find a real career or something like that. I think I think that realistically, the chances of making it in a band, especially to the point that you can support yourself comfortably and have that be the only thing you do, the odds are stacked against you. And so I think my parents were kind of realistic about that, whereas I was just like, no, this is just what I'm going to do. And I just felt like I'd figure out a way to make it work somehow. So yeah, but they never discouraged it or anything. And like when I was younger, they would always take me to band practice, and they bought me my first guitar, and did a lot to encourage it.
Right. So this is just an observation that I've made from getting to know people who I would consider successful musicians, and this isn't 100% true for everyone, but more often than not, when they're off tour and not writing, they're doing something else. No one's like really just chilling. I mean, maybe they are a little bit, but lots of guys are building cabinets or doing leather work or doing something, that just something else, and I think a lot of people have a perception that musicians are just musicking at all times and there's never a side hustle or another interest. Do you have any thing on the side that you like to pursue, or other artistic interests, or just other things you're really into?
Well, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to not have to do anything else, like professionally, since Taking Back Sunday really started to do well. So anything else that I do creatively is just for fun. And I was always into drawing, and in high school I thought maybe I would do something with art, and I still like to do things, creative projects with drawing and stuff. And I through the years also I've done some homemade music video stuff. I did some Stray Light Run music videos with my wife back in the day, and I've done different things with filming and photographing stuff. And, that's always something I'm interested in. And, but yeah, fortunately all that stuff is kind of just stuff I can do because I enjoy it. And, I haven't had to rely on it to pay the bills or anything.
Right on. That's cool though. It's always fun to, explore artistic stuff in a different way. I think we can pigeonhole ourselves sometimes, and it's nice to stretch your wings a little bit and get out. Like, what style of drawing do you do? Is it like abstract things, or what is it? If you could describe it.
Well, like in high school, I was really into like drawing comic book stuff.
Oh man. Yeah.
And I thought that maybe I could be a comic book artist. And then I started making my own at home. And the first time I made my own comic book, and I realized how much drawing like the background behind the characters and like drawing buildings and cityscapes and the room that the people were in, how much of that you had to do, and how much of that how much time and attention to detail it takes, and how long it took for me to do that stuff. I was kind of like, oh man, I don't think I'm gonna be able to hack it as a comic book artist, but I really enjoyed doing it. And I would generally then just like draw just a picture of a superhero instead of trying to draw a whole comic book, around somebody. But I was always into that. And I did some other stuff with like commercial art, and I've done some stuff with painting and that. Mostly now I kind of will just do like line drawings, and it's, kind of random stuff. Either it'll just be like drawing a picture of something I see in the room, or a picture of somebody's face, or a scene of kind of like two people interacting. But generally I kind of like come on this thing where I'll just have like a pen and try to do the whole drawing just with the pen, and like just simple lines, and trying to kind of capture something with the least amount of like detail and shading or anything as possible. Just try to like kind of do it in a simple way that is effective and looks cool. So that's probably the best way to describe it.
Okay. So you still like comics?
I do, yeah. I do. I'm not as into it as I was when I was younger, but yeah, I still will read stuff. I mostly read Batman comics for some reason. That's one that I've just stuck with since I was a kid.
How did you check out the recent Snyder Batmans and things like that?
Yes, yeah. I did. Yes, that was, I think, actually kind of got me back into comic books a little bit. I started reading those, and they were so good. I started just going and finding all the collected books of the Snyder ones. Yeah, they're all great. So yeah, that's one of the big ones actually for me recently.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. I haven't gotten all the way through it. I'm really kind of late to the game. I've known about it and I've read it here and there, but I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get the collected editions. I think start at Court of Owls. Is that the first one? I think so. Yeah, there's a lot. It's taken me a while to kind of piece together where they all fit, but I think you're right. Yeah, I think that's the first one. Yeah, I want to start there and move forward because I'm a big Batman fan, and I used to read a lot more comics, but I started not branching out because I've always kind of read these, but I started sticking with more just like horror stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I love creepy, weird things, and
right.
and so I really like horror comics, and so I have some friends that are much more into it, and so basically what I do is I just say, hey, what's good right now, and also what's available in a trade, because
right.
I read through them really fast. So if I get singles the way my friends do, I'm like, okay, on to the next. I need to sit down with a trade and like go through the whole thing. I don't know if that's impatient or spastic or what that is.
Yeah, I have the same thing. I can't really follow along with something on a month to month basis. Well, one thing is like you read one issue of something and yeah, it goes by pretty quick, and then you've got another month till the next part of the story. And I don't really like, one thing is even if I'm interested in what happens next, like by the time a month goes by, I'm kind of like thinking about other things, doing other things, and like the idea of just sticking with something month by month by month and following a story just seems a little crazy. So, yeah, just waiting till the story's done and you can get the whole thing compiled in one book is, much nicer.
Yeah. I think most of the people I know that do the singles thing, they have a lot of them. So they'll have
right. They're following a bunch of different comics and storylines and stuff. Yeah.
Maybe I'm just not like, maybe I'm too like squirrel for that. Like, I don't know, but got to focus on one thing at a time, or I don't focus on anything at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as like newer music and artists, is there anybody that you're particularly excited about, or it could just be new to you? Anybody that's really firing you up musically these days?
I just recently started listening to this Strokes album the newest Strokes album. It came out in 2020, so I'm a little late to the game on that, but I've been listening to that a lot, and it's really good. I actually had some friends tell me in 2020 that I should check it out. And it was one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to do that. And then kind of forgot about it. And for some reason just started checking it out like a month ago. But I really like that. That also kind of like renewed my interest in the Strokes in general, because I kind of like lost touch with their albums at a certain point. So now I've kind of been going back through their catalog. And so that's been fun. That's been one of my big ones. There's a lot of stuff that I've gotten into recently, like is not super new, but maybe some things like there's a band called Idols, who also is not new, but they were new to me in the last like 2 years, and so I've really been getting into them, and Modest Mouse still their new album, that was one I was right on top of, and it was really immediate for me when I heard that. I was just totally into it just immediately.
Yeah. I just speaking of Modest Mouse, I remembered I shared a picture of Isaac's multiple pedal board view. I don't know if you've seen that picture floating around the interwebs, but
No,
it's pretty insane. He's got it's a above shot of him standing in the middle of, I think it's 3 or 4 different pedal boards that are just completely loaded out. I don't even remember what was all on all of them.
oh my God.
But it was just like, oh man, this guy.
I
I love it.
Yeah, I've got to check that out. I'd be really interested to see what kind of pedals he uses, because it's an interesting variety of sounds. Especially, they've got so many albums and so many different sounds on each song on each album. So that's really cool. That's something that I think I've always been a little bit intimidated by, the idea of having, like 20 pedals or 30 pedals to be working with.
Right.
It always seems a little bit scary.
I'm trying
even just like the fact if some what's that?
I'm trying to find the picture right now. I'm not ignoring you. Oh, they took it down. I'll have to go back to my Instagram, but it's way back there. I won't worry about it right now. I was gonna like go through it and be like, okay, he's got this.
Yeah. I think you can look up. I think there are places I've got to check. There used to be some site, I forget what it was, that somehow would give you a rundown of people's pedal boards, that they, it'd actually go through every pedal and tell you what different people use. So I would like to check that out for Modest Mouse. But yeah, it always is scary to me, that idea of having so many pedals going, just keeping track of everything. But then also, I don't know how people deal with, like, if something goes out, if your guitar cuts out and you've got like 30 pedals, like, you go through every one of those connections to see what might have stopped working, or do you just constantly replace all the wires and plug everything in, like, all the time, every single show, like, so nothing's going to go out? I don't know. It's always a little scary to me. I always end up like simplifying things because of that. And like, there's always like songs where I could probably use a couple more pedals that I did in the studio, but I'll be like, well, I'm going to keep it a little more simple because I'm just, scared of getting overloaded with pedals.
It's people take different approaches. The way I think that looks most appealing to me, if you're a heavy pedal user, would be you can do it yourself or take it to somebody who really knows what they're doing, and getting a really professional setup with the wires all secured and zip tied and dialed in.
Right.
And then using most likely a switcher of some sort so that it's all just contained. You're not stomping repeatedly on.
Yeah, right.
I think that's the way I would do it if I was to be touring around. But honestly, a lot of people these days, and it makes a lot of sense. If they need a lot of effects, they'll get it pre-programmed beforehand into their, whatever digital unit they're using, and get it as close as they can to what they were doing in the studio, and just use those presets, which is probably the smartest way to do it, as far as,
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And it's, fly gigs all of a sudden get way easier, and I don't know. Have you ever done any of that stuff?
With like the digital, like pre-programmed kind of stuff?
Like the Line 6 Helix, or, the new Neural DSP floor unit, or anything like that?
I have not. And, some of that stuff might make sense for me and probably be more practical. For some reason, like, I've just been very hands-on with like the pedals, and kind of like a little bit old fashioned, I guess. Like I still don't even use like a wireless setup for my pedals. I still have the long wire plugged in, which I don't even really know why. It would probably be easier to just be wireless, but like it's just kind of what I'm used to, is being plugged in physically. And then you know, a lot of the guitar pedals, like the delays and stuff like that, there's something I like about like physically turning the knobs and changing the settings during the show, which again, not the most practical thing, but I guess it's kind of what I'm used to. So I've mostly stuck with that.
I am with you though. I mean, I don't play live, but I like having the real thing, and I like having, you know, tube amps moving the air around me. And I feel like the thing that gets lost the most in going to all digital in-ear type setup is not having that physical air hit you. You know,
Yeah.
things kind of feel weird when you're used to it being the quote unquote old school way. Some people have started, you know, mixing the two and using monitors on stage with that stuff to try to get some of that.
Right.
I don't know. I feel like it's all really great. And again, probably what I would use if I was touring around, but I'm with you. I think something gets lost in translation, not having the physical thing there. And it could just be in our heads, but it feels
It's possible. I mean, the digital stuff back, you know, even probably like 5 or 6 years ago, there was definitely something missing, but now like things are getting, that stuff is getting so good that yeah, I feel like they're figuring out how to even recreate like some of those like warmer sounds, or like, you know, a more analog type sound, like even digitally now.
Mhm.
Even those like amp simulators and stuff are it's pretty amazing now to me to hear how good it sounds. You know, when that stuff first started, it was like, oh, that's a cool idea, but obviously it doesn't sound as good as the real thing. And now it's kind of like getting there.
It's especially with recording, you know, I honestly, I think my ears are pretty well tuned at this point, but I know for a fact that I've talked to some people and been like, dude, your record sounds great. And they're like, oh yeah, we did it all in the box. I'm like, part of me is like, that's awesome. And part of me is like, that's, I don't know. It loses a
Yeah.
little bit of the magic. But if it sounds good, it is good. And that's what
That's,
you know.
yeah, that is the thing. And yeah, well, the last time Taking Back Sunday was in the studio, our producer we had one of those. I can't remember the name of the simulator or whatever it was. But we were going through it, and we would actually like A/B it sometimes with the amp that was plugged in, you know, and see which sounded better and which one we wanted to use. And I think we used it sometimes, you know, and but it was surprising to me. It got pretty hard to tell, you know, what was digital and what was not. It's surprising.
Yeah, I mean, I've taken to starting when I'm recording, I'll record the guitar cabs, you know, just like normal, but I'll also run a DI out to just to my interface and grab that so that later when I'm mixing things, it's like, I want to try an orange. Nope, that's not right.
Yeah.
I'll try a high watt. Nope, that didn't work. And you scroll through, because I use these STL Tones plugins for recording a lot, or not a lot. I'm starting to use them a lot. And it's just nice to have options. I guess I'm just a nerd who likes a bunch of options. So, you know.
Yeah. I mean, we always have a DI running with everything we do. It's just always good to have that option.
Yeah, you never know what you might want to do with it. It's better to have it and not need it, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
So speaking of recording and, you know, studios and producing, I have a Facebook group attached to this podcast. I told them you were coming on. The number one thing that everybody wanted to know, and I apologize if you're getting tired of hearing this question, but is, can we expect a Straylight Run reunion at some point?
Well, we have, we're playing our first shows together in December. It'll be the first time we've played in over 10 years. And then the first time we're playing with my sister back with us in probably like 13 years. So we did that. We put out the live Straylight Run album, which I that just came out on vinyl this past month or so.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a live album from 2005 that we had never released, and we finally just released it. So that kind of got things going again to some extent. And so we're doing two shows with Taking Back Sunday in December, and we don't really have any plans other than that. But I feel like that does kind of open the door a little bit more than it has been, and we're definitely open to doing some more shows, and maybe even a mini tour. But that's all kind of in the future right now. Nothing's set.
Right on. Well, that is much better than no.
yeah, which has been the answer for a long time.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I have a feeling that the shows will be closer to your neck of the woods, so I might not be able to make it. But if somehow it hits the West Coast, I will definitely be there. So
yeah, we're doing the shows are the Taking Back Sunday does these Christmas shows at Starland Ballroom in New Jersey every year, so they're going to be there for those Taking Back Sunday shows. Nothing even close to the West Coast, but like I said, I've had an idea for a while of it would be tough for Straylight Run to do a full kind of like month-long tour just logistically,
right?
But I have had the thought of doing kind of like a handful of shows in the Northeast, a handful of shows in the Midwest, and a handful on the West Coast or something like that. So, we'll see, maybe sometime.
So where can people find the newly released 2005 performance if they were so interested?
Well, it's on all the streaming services right now. It's anywhere you can stream music. And I think you can buy it on vinyl. I believe it's in record stores in real life, I think. And you can also order the vinyl online as well. Where it came out through Craft Records. I don't remember the exact address on the internet to find it, but Craft Records has released it, and it's on their website. You can order the vinyl if you're into that sort of thing.
I'm sure you can Google Craft Records Straylight Run and it'll pop.
Right. Yeah, or Straylight Run live at the Patchogue Theater is what it's called. So, but it's very easy to find streaming wise, if nothing else.
I got a little bit of a sample before we, a few weeks ago before it released, and it's everything that I hoped it would be. So it was great.
Wow. Glad to hear that.
Yeah. Before we get into the very, very final questions of the main episode, I do have like a weird, it's a weird aside, I guess. It's something that my wife and I, it's just a strange occurrence. So just before we got married, in my brain, we went together to a Straylight Run show, I believe at the Hawthorne Theater in Portland. It was 2007-ish or so. And I loved it. It was a great show. I remember it very clearly. I have a stub in my framed ticket stubs, here on the wall. It's like right in there. I can see it. And I'm like, yeah, we went and seen Straylight Run, because she'll occasionally be like, I never got to see Straylight Run. I was like, yeah, we went together and saw Straylight Run. And I was like, I have the ticket. She's like, I wasn't there. You didn't go with me. And I'm like, who else would I have went with? Like, we were almost like we were engaged. Like I wouldn't have went with anyone else. She's like, no, I don't think I went. I was like, how can you not remember this? So it's like this weird thing in our house of like,
wow.
Did she, I know I did she or did she not attend that performance with me? And if not, who the heck did I go with? It's just a weird story.
And you've never figured it out for sure still?
No. I know that it was on Black Friday. I know that much because we went. It was like our first, like engaged thing that we did was like go look for furniture, like the lamest thing ever, on Black Friday. And she's like, yeah, I remember that. And I was like, then we went to the show. She's like, no. And I'm like, what did I? Who did I go to the show with? Doesn't make any sense. I didn't go by myself. I never went to shows, but I don't think I've ever gone to a show by myself. So yeah. Anyway, a mystery in the Wyland house that you're a part of.
Right.
But yeah, before we close out, this is the part where I have a couple classic questions I ask everybody at the end. But before I do that, I like to give the guests a chance to, say whatever they want to say. You've got a microphone in front of a few thousand people right now. So if you want to give a shout out to your aunt, or if you want to get a message out to people, or just say anything right now, this is your opportunity to do so. The floor is yours.
All right. I mean, I don't really have too much more to say. I mean, other than what we've been talking about. I don't know how soon people are going to see this, but we are just starting a tour with Jimmy Eat World and Beaches. And so if it's coming out there soon enough, you can still go see us at one of our many shows on the West Coast in the next 2 weeks. So that's exciting. Yeah, we got the Stray Light Run live album. We covered that. The EP by my other project is out there. That is also on vinyl. We're also getting ready to release a remix version of one of the songs. And, so that's probably about it.
All right.
Plug a couple of things that I've got going on.
There you go. Is there a Portland date on this tour?
Not Portland. We go to Bend, Oregon, though.
Oh, I love Bend. We can figure out.
I don't know how far that is from Portland. I know it's generally around, but
it's like 3 hours. It's not bad.
Okay.
And Bend's a wonderful town. I love Bend. So I'll see if I can sneak over there. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
But all right, last questions, and we'll segue over to the patron side of the show. So first one is, and you may have answered this already, what is your favorite Boss pedal?
Yeah, I did that DD3 delay pedal. I still will use that. There's something I really like about that one. It was I feel like it was right before a lot of their pedals started to be more digital. And I think that one probably is digital, I guess, but yeah. It has an analog sound to it. It also does this thing with when you change the time that a lot of newer pedals don't do. If you let the feedback keep going on it, and then you change the time, it will also change the pitch of whatever's feeding back. And that's something I haven't really been able to do on many other pedals. So that's my favorite.
All right. Final question. And I know, you live in the very important place for this question to occur. So it'll be interesting to get your take on it. But what is your favorite kind of pizza?
When you say kind, do you mean like where I would get it from, or what kind of things I would put on the pizza?
It's a very, that's a very loaded question. I know there's regional styles, there are toppings, there are specific pizzerias, and I kind of mean be as specific as you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I would say not super specific to a pizza place, but New York City in general, I'd say almost any place you go and just get a slice of cheese pizza, it to me is about the best kind of pizza in the world. There's nothing quite like it. Obviously, I'm not really breaking any new ground here with my love of New York City pizza, but there is a reason that I think it's so well known. And other than that, I would say also in New York is the grandma slice, which they do there very, very well. Mostly sauce and then like one slice of mozzarella cheese in the middle of it, and that is excellent.
Yeah, a little bit thicker. It's a square cut.
Yeah, a little more like a Sicilian style, but it's mostly sauce and just a little bit of cheese. Excellent.
I'm with you on that. I was very skeptical about the whole New York pizza thing before I went there a few times, and I was like, oh, I was wrong. No, this is something special.
Yeah, nobody can quite recreate it. Whenever you go somewhere and it says New York style pizza, it's just no one can quite get it right. It's not the same anywhere else.
No, I think part of that's the whole vibe, just the experience, like standing there on a wet street in that place eating a hot slice
There's something about it.
there's something about it, man. This is coming from an admitted skeptic, so I'm with you. Well, dude, this has been a real treat. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. This is great.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We'll go ahead and wrap up this portion of the show. So for John, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones.
There you have it, folks. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I certainly enjoyed recording it, and I hope that shows because it was a really good time. But as much fun as that was, and I hate to do this, but I'm going to, the bonus content was even better. So if you feel like supporting the show and you want more content, there is so much bonus content there, people. I'm telling you. You can go to patreon.com/tonemob. For $5 a month, you can get extra episodes beamed directly to your ears every week. Additionally, if you are an Apple user, you can use the Apple subscribe feature and get those right in your podcast player without having to sign up for any new apps or programs or anything. You just click the button and say, yeah, I want this. And there you go. You are in. And if you can't do that, if that is not going to work for you, I totally understand. I totally get it. But if you could, as always, share this with a friend. Share this with somebody that you think might enjoy it. I know I say that every week at this point. I beg for it. But seriously, it's the number one thing you can do to help keep this show going. And that is telling other people about it, whether it's people in your gear forums, people in your neighborhood, people at your guitar store, people wherever. Please, please share this with other people. It helps so much. All right, everybody. I'll talk to you next time, and I hope you have yourself a great week. Bye-bye. One last thing before we totally sign off here, I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.